I didn't feel like I had any other better option. And the reason I was using Adobe in the first place is because everybody swore by Adobe, and I would be like a fool to not use it, right? So Windows has finally unveiled their new laptops with Snapdragon X Elite. And while I've been awaiting this SoC for some time, it seems to be overshadowed by Windows's new Copilot AI Plus features, whatever. Particularly their recall feature. Now, I'm not going to go super deep into this. I'm sure you've heard of it before, but if not, essentially it's what it sounds like, except that the new AI feature will take screenshots of your computer. And if you're looking for something, maybe when you was looking up a phone number, an email, and whatever it is, whatever you was doing in your PC, you can write to the AI, and the AI will take the information and recall it because it took a screenshot of everything you've done on your PC. And it's like every new change, there's subtle nuance features, but essentially that's what it is. Now, Microsoft said that that information does not leave your system, but that has done little to, comfort the many Microsoft users of possible abuse. You can just imagine how bad this can go. The point is because many people are now saying that they are leaving Windows. And while those who are doing so are heading over to Linux, there might be an alternative for others. Okay, so you're probably not surprised when I'm talking about Chrome OS. I like Chromebooks, I like Chrome OS. I also like little Linux features too, so been on channel, you know that as well. So no shade to anybody going to Linux, but this is like an alternative to the alternative. Because once upon a time, I too was contemplating leaving Windows. That is before I decided to go all in into Chrome OS, or at least when I decided to make Chrome OS my daily driver. There were a few things that kind of kept me from making a jump initially. And now I can make this video about how I moved. So I'm going to start saying that I don't hate Windows. Very useful, very utilitarian. Uh, is that right? The right word? I'm glad Windows exists. I work with Windows every day. It's at my job, and I'm not like a novice at it. I can get around it. It's just for day to day, and I learned that I just don't want to deal with a lot of the baggage, and that was what I was feeling back then. So years ago, I had an Asus laptop. I believe it was 14-inch, and it was running Windows 8, but it was about to go to Windows 8.1. And my controversial take, I love Windows 8. I love the tiles. But then again, I also had the mobile phone, so maybe that was why. I don't think I've seen a single person online say that they love Windows 8. I did. And while I did love my Asus, and it was touchscreen by the way, that feature was pretty cool. It was beginning to show its age, and it was just so slow. And I used my phone to do the immediate tasks, the daily tasks that I wanted to do. I wanted to check my email. I wanted to check my bank statements. I wanted to write, and that was a big thing for me. And I found that it was just a big hassle to do these things. The booting process alone, the updating, and yet I had to in my mind, oh, better update it so when I really do want to use it, then I don't have to deal with 10, 20, maybe more of updating, of slow starting up. Now as to why I didn't go to the other big operating systems, so Mac OS or any of the Linux distros. I didn't have a lot of money, and I didn't really know a lot about Mac OS outside of those little computers that were in the school library. I didn't even know Linux really existed. What was available to me was Chrome OS, and in the form of a HP Chromebook that cost me around 40 bucks on eBay. And the build quality was nowhere near as good as my Asus. This was plastic, maybe had a little some aluminum to it, but it looked cheap, and it was cheap. Now, When switching to any operating systems, you should do your due diligence on the programs you will use and what can be used, on the new operating systems. What can be used as a substitute for any proprietary software, and simply what can you live without. Now, this could be different from person to person, but the two programs that I had to deal with was Microsoft Office and pretty much Microsoft Word specifically, and Adobe. Yeah, that's right. More Adobe drama. Now, I'm a writer, amateur fictional writer. So using Word was huge for me. I even began using it on my phone. But once Microsoft went to a subscription model and I couldn't just pay one lump sum at once, uh, I was out. That made the push to use Google Docs, because I did start using Google Docs. I found there were more features, more templates in Microsoft Word, so I didn't think Google Docs was as good as um, Microsoft's option, but free was free. And since I was writing on multiple different devices, one problem I kept running into when I used Microsoft's, any kind of tech, was it wouldn't sync well with documents all the time. So if I write something here and I wrote something here on another device, then I had two different files. And oh right, I forgot to save it, and now I gotta choose which file do I want to keep and which I have to copy over, then delete that file. It became kind of a mess. Made all these multiple different copies of the same file, but with different variations, and I have to go through manually to kind of sift through to see which one I want and which one I had to kind of Frankenstein into the document that I wanted. With Google Docs, the syncing feature just worked well. I'm calling it a feature. It just auto saved really well, so I didn't have to think about it. Doing my laptop, went to another laptop, which now that I've probably several computers in the household, like that's kind of crucial. If I start on one device and I win another device, I need it to be the same on the new device that I began in the old one. And it is. Now, as far as the Adobe problem, so I had started on YouTube. Now, I wasn't using Adobe Premiere. I was just using for the graphics. So maybe I think I was making like ebook covers and YouTube thumbnails, and that was it. I two things. I found the learning curve very steep, so I would have to drown myself in tutorial videos just to do something very simple. Now, I might be kind of different now, as I am willing to teach myself and go through the process and look up tutorial videos, because now that I start video editing more so on these software, I have no problem looking up a tutorial for any small task. But back then I was a real novice, and it just kind of hampered me a lot. And now the second one shouldn't be of no surprise. It was the price. I feel like for what I was getting out of it, I was just paying way too much. I paid for more than I was using, and I didn't feel like I had any other better option. And the reason I was using Adobe in the first place is because everybody swore by Adobe, and I would be like a fool to not use it, right? So another thing about Adobe is it's not compatible with any Chromebook, let alone the Chromebook I was using. So when I found Canva and saw that with the free tier, I could get things done better and faster than I ever did on Adobe, which pretty much sealed it for me. I canceled my subscription and I haven't looked back since. So that's my story of how I went from Windows PC to Chrome OS. And while this may not be the story you have, and maybe throughout the video you kind of decided that Chrome OS is just not for you, which is fine. Regardless, I hope that everyone can use the software and operating systems that's right for them without too much compromise. So, are you planning on making the switch? If so, what OS did you start with, and what OS are you going to? All right, that's going to do it for me. This is Sounds Pro. God bless.